Good morning, Family Practicum class. I am so glad that I get to explain some of the things that I learned from the Family Life Education book this time for chapters 4, 5, 6, 7, and then from the church book on pages 11 through 15 and 17 through 29. So a couple things that I really enjoyed in chapter 4. I loved how it started talking about how we captivate audience correctly and good ways to do that. It talked about reading books that are applicable to what we're teaching. When I was in a family parenting education class, one of my teachers actually would start classes by reading to us some children novels or just some children books. One of my favorites was a book called How Are You Peeling? And it was a book about a bunch of different fruits that had faces, and it talked about the emotions that the fruits were feeling to help explain and teach children what their emotions are. I find it extremely important as a parent educator to teach parents their emotions because I feel like parents really don't understand what they're feeling. And if they don't understand what they're feeling, they then cannot teach their children adequately how they're feeling. Another thing that I loved in finding instructional balance, I was able to teach for my parent education class course. It was three 30-minute sessions, and I learned that in my first session, I talked far too much. I didn't ask enough questions. I didn't have enough material to engage the audience, and that was really difficult. So learning as time goes on how to bridle the need for me to talk, but understand that I can give the lesson to my audience to really meet their needs instead of throwing information at them. I was very interested about the acting on existing knowledge. I loved how it was talking about learning is facilitated when existing knowledge is activated as a foundation for new knowledge. So a way that I was able to learn in some of my former classes how to act on old knowledge or the pre-existing knowledge was my teachers would post around the classroom a bunch of questions or words and would say, "What do you think this means?" And before class, we would go around with a Sharpie and we would write our insights as to what we thought it was about. And as we did that, the teacher just sat and observed. And as class started, that's what she would first go to. She said, "Okay, so I asked about this question. This is what you guys thought." And she would work on that knowledge and build there. And I really loved that. And that's something that I want to apply to my teaching. I loved how applying new knowledge. I like how it always says, leave commitments. As a missionary, that was something that we focused on so heavily, leaving commitments to our investigators to act some way, to use the knowledge that we learned. As me and my partner Jessica are creating lesson plans for our clients, they're not clients, participants, we're trying to figure out ways that we can commit them to things so that they can progress and feel confident in their parenting and in their changing. Continuing on to engaging the audience in chapter 5, I was extremely interested in the quote that talked about how in secular places, oftentimes the curriculum, the people have to meet the curriculum and adapt to the curriculum. However, in family education, we take the people and adapt our curriculum to them and to their needs. And that made it so much more personal to me. And I really, really liked that. I also loved how it talked about teaching to the ideals, not teaching to what they're doing wrong or trying to not meet the bar or help them come to the bar, but teaching to this ideal that they can have a successful family, that they can be successful parents, and whatever else. As a missionary, one of my favorite lessons I learned in a zone conference was from my president. He said the brethren, they don't teach to a standard, they teach to the ideal. The Lord expects the ideal. And as we are taught the ideal, we choose to come up to the ideal and to change ourselves and become better people. I truly believe that's the same with parent educating. As we teach to the ideal of what they can become and help them see the ideal, they will change, and it'll be wonderful to be able to see where they've come from. Once again, in chapter 5, it talked about capitalizing on emotions. Again, I think that parents don't really understand their emotions. They can't take how they're feeling and put it into words. That's why we go straight to anger and frustration and yelling. However, I feel like if we could teach our parents better ways to understand their emotions, they would then be able to teach their children and find so much success with that. I loved in chapter 7, working with diverse audiences. There was a quote in it that talked about how that the more stressed children, or the children that had gone through the most trial, were actually the more resilient. And I've actually been able to see that with my fiance as well as with my trainer. Both of them came from extremely hard lives, and now both of them are amazing human individuals, and it's amazing to see where they've come from. My last point is I loved how in chapter 6, as well as in the church book, it talked about different ideas of relying on the Holy Ghost and keeping your audience and different tools. In my family life education class, I learned a lot of tools that could help as I teach. So some of the things that I loved was having family council meetings and counseling with your families about how to become better and more resilient as a family. Practicing in non-stressful situations and role-playing and asking them to give examples that are not necessarily their examples, but just examples they've seen. Giving them models and giving them helps and tools. And know as I do these things, it's going to help me be a better educator. Thank you.